What's going on? It's your boy Sermon at Sermon's Domain on Twitter. Montana of 300's debut album, Fire in the Church, is now out. And I was anticipating this, probably one of my most anticipated releases of the year, simply because I'm just a huge fan of Montana. I think he's very lyrically talented. I think he's getting there when it comes to like the catchy hooks and actually constructing a song. There's a lot of artists in the game that have like that lyrical ability, but not everybody can craft songs. And Montana is someone that's kind of been branding himself in that direction, especially with like his last project, which was a collaboration with Tali of 300, titled Guns N' Roses. But here we are, Fire in the Church. And before we even talk about the music, I kind of want to talk about what the title means. Now, I was looking up an interview that Montana did with Noisy back in March, I believe. And the thing that Montana was saying was that the church is such like this holy, location. It's pure. And the fire represents the people. Once those people get into the church, they kind of represent the fire because they come in with their sins and, all their judgments of other people. I mean, if you've attended a church or even like seen it in like movies, there's always been like one of those scenes where it's kind of like you got that family that's kind of judging another family on like what they're wearing to church, something like that. And that's what he was talking about in that interview. And the other meaning of the title is that pretty much like whenever you hear the term fire in a church, you know that somebody is going to be like, there's a fire in the church, and that's kind of how he describes his career. Like, you know, he's built up such a huge fan base that people have to look at him now. So that's essentially what like the fire in the church is. Like he is the fire in the church because somebody's gonna yell out and everybody has to look in that direction. And that's pretty much what Montana has done with his career. Amassing millions and millions of views per video and just building this fan base. Getting into the actual music, I think the theme behind Fire in the Church, besides, breaking down the title and all that, was that he looks at himself as a rap god. He said it on previous projects and freestyles, but that's what Montana believes. And I think the first 5 songs on the project kind of help to back his claim. A lot of people don't want the title of rap god. I was looking it up. The only other artists besides Montana that have really talked about wanting to be a rap god are Eminem, obviously, and then Lil B. But what sets apart Montana from Lil B and Eminem, besides, like the obvious lyrical abilities, they don't rap the same, is that those two merely said it in one song. Montana is someone who constantly reminds you project after project, freestyle after freestyle, and then he backs that claim up. And that's one of the things that you gotta admire about him. So going back into like the first 5 songs, the intro, which is called Heat Stroke. Now, Montana has always had really strong intros. Guns N' Roses had a good intro. Curse with a Blessing had a Slaughterhouse, and that's probably one of my top 5 songs. So that's one thing that Montana aims to do with every project is give you that hard-hitting first impression. Because let's face it, if anybody picks up this project today, they're going to want to hear something that reels them in. That's what an intro is. And so with Montana doing that well, he's able to bring in those people and keep them in. Because you can bring someone in with the first track, but you can lose them on the second or the third. You got to keep going and give them a reason to listen. And that's what Montana does with, the first 5 songs. He has Land of the Dark, very catchy, very lyrical. He has Wife in You. And I want to branch off right now and kind of talk about how there's one thing in particular that I think holds Montana back. I think he makes a bold statement by saying that he's a rap guy, but I also think that there's room for improvement for him. And Wife and You it's a really good record. Don't get me wrong, but it's this record and then Motherfuckers Mad Part 2, which kind of indicate this direction that I don't like. And that's him using like the term swag. It just feels like an outdated term to use. And it's just, I think that's one of the things that holds him back. And another thing that I've noticed about his music is that he'll have these really dope songs like Heat Stroke and, Land of the Dark. But then there's other records where he'll have a lot of lines that are noticeably bad. And one of the lines in particular, he said, "I'm getting bread by the loaf." Like that's not really a nice line at all. It's just like one of those average generic type of lines. And I wouldn't bring it up if it wasn't like more in abundance. You can listen to the project and you'll hear these lines, and that's one of the things that stood out to me. And I think that happens because when you have someone as good as Montana, when he spits a bad line, it like stands out like a sore thumb. So that was one of the things. Those are two of the things that kind of, in my opinion, hold Montana back a little bit. And the other thing that I'll probably get to in a little bit, there's one more thing. I'll get to that in a little bit. But going back to these first five songs because they're some of my favorite. Then you got Motherfuckers Mad Part 2. It's a good record. I like that. And then you got my favorite on the project. It's Fighting Demons, Dropping Jewels. And the title pretty much sums it all up. He's out here talking about his pain and everything that he's gone through. And he's also dropping jewels. He says, before I live as a slave, I'll die on my throne. And I know Montana's not the first to say this one, but I really resonated with it. He said, every man dies, but not every man lives. Again, she's not the first person to ever say that in life, but it's one of those things where if you hear it from like someone you respect, someone you really like and listen to, then it kind of makes a lot of sense. And that particular record just really stood out to me, and I like that one a lot. It's one of the records that I would recommend. Like if you're wavy or like not wavy, but like if you're on the fence about this project, then you should listen to Fighting Demons, Dropping Jewels. But those are like the first five songs, and those ones are going to keep you going throughout the project. Now, here's my other issue with the project, is that it's kind of long. It's 18 songs, and not a lot of artists can pull that off in 2016 because it gets very long, and you just don't want to listen to 18 songs because a lot of the times there's going to be filler. In particular, there's records like Don't Trick Off and Robo Op, and then like a Bad as Hell. Some of those records, they just don't really resonate with me as much. They just feel unnecessary to the overall album. You can kind of trim the fat and still have the same kind of impact with something that's shorter than 18 songs, in my opinion. The one thing that I also do admire is that even though Montana is probably big enough to get a ton of guest features, like he did a record with Fetty Wap just the other day that he put out that's not on the album. And he has one on here with Kevin Gates called Goonies, which I like a lot. At first, I wasn't too big on it, but the more I listen to it, it's like one of those records where you got to listen to it a number of times to really fully get it all. Like Kevin Gates is one of those type of artists that says a lot of things and you might not get it on the first listen. But that record grew on me. But the one thing that I respect most about Montana is that he continues to put his team on. The FGE Cypher Part 2. I'm not a big fan of the beat because it feels too close to Part 1, which was on Guns N' Roses. But he has Part 2 on here, and it has Tali of 300, it has Savage, J-Real, and No Fatigue. These are the four artists, the main artists that Montana has kind of been pushing on us throughout his projects since Curse with a Blessing. And you got to admire that. For that reason alone is why I'll end up checking out their projects. I don't know when everybody else is coming out, but Montana did say that Tali of 300's debut project, album, whatever you want to call it, is supposed to come out in September. And he said that like back in December when he announced Fire in the Church was coming out in May. So he's been on point with like his release date. So I'm sure we can expect it in September. But like I said, for that reason alone, like none of the artists I've heard has really like blown me away, but nobody has really spit anything whack to where I'm like, okay, I won't listen to this when it comes. No, I'll definitely give all four of these artists a chance when they finally drop a solo project coming soon. I know there's a FGE album in the works that he's kind of talked about doing, so that should come in the future as well. But Montana is definitely trying to put on his team, and that's a good thing. That's really good to see somebody really sticking to that. And so that was what I had to say about the album. I think one more record that I really wanted to talk about before we get out of here is Down Here. He's made records about like Chicago and then the environment he grew up in, but I don't think any of them have been as vivid and like well constructed as this one is. Minus the hook. The hook is like the one part that I think could have been improved, could have been changed. But Down Here has some of like the most vivid lyrics that he's dropped when referring to like his city and talking about what's going on. So that was another standout to me. One line in particular that I had quoted that I didn't get to say when I was talking about heat stroke was, "You only pray to God when you want something, so your bond is weak. I pray to tell him to thank him. Thank you for blessing me beyond belief." I like that line. It kind of reminded me like a contrast from Chance the Rapper, because Chance the Rapper just put out Coloring Book, and it's very gospel oriented. It's very talking about his faith, his connection to God, and Christianity. And Montana kind of does that too, in a different way. It'd be really cool to see like a collaboration between the two. But when I was thinking of that line, it kind of reminded me of Chance. But those are my thoughts on Fire in the Church. It's out now. Go pick it up on iTunes. And once you listen to the album, let me know what you think in the comment section below. And then like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, share the video. Follow me on Twitter at Sermons Domain. And as always, thank you for your time. I appreciate you for watching. And until next time, peace.